republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, you're on. You want me to move like we're all good, Chad.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm going to turn the microphone over to Mr. Reeman, who will then turn the microphone over to Mr. Phillips. So, Mr. Reeman.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me? Check.
Carla, can you just put your hand up if you can hear us? Okay, she can hear us. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming out to tonight's budget meeting. As you know, one of our top priorities is maintaining a high-quality education for our students while being fiscally responsible. Unfortunately, despite a proposed tax levy increase of 2.34%, which you'll see in a few minutes from Mr. Phillips, and utilizing a major portion of our reserves, we still face difficult decisions for the upcoming school year. This is largely due to significant increases in health insurance and transportation costs, totaling approximately $2.5 million. Even after the tax levy increase, we are projecting a budget shortfall that will require us to access 8 teaching positions across the district. This is an unfortunate but necessary step to balance the budget. We're still awaiting the governor's budget proposals, final details on state aid. However, based on various indicators, we believe that the aid will only partially cover the funding gap we face at best. While these are challenging times, I want to assure everyone that we're committed to making responsible fiscal decisions while minimizing the impacts of student learning as much as possible. Thank you. I'll now turn it over to Mr. Phillips.
Thank you, Mr. Reeman. Thank all of you and welcome to the April 9th budget review presentation. Where we stand in the timeline. So tonight's presentation is the update of the budget that was presented on March 12th. As more information was received during this time frame, the budget was adjusted. Those adjustments were incorporated into tonight's version of the 24-25 budget. After tonight's meeting, a week from now, we have the April board meeting where there's a budget discussion and adoption, followed by the budget hearing in early May, and May 21st would be the budget votes. There are many factors to go into the budget. Shown here are just a few of them, including instructional need, out-of-district costs, medical insurance, and contractual obligations. The proposed 24-25 budget is $77,834,290 as of tonight. Shown in this slide is a breakdown by function of the expenditure budget. By a significant amount, the largest percentage increase of the budget is transportation, which is projected to increase by 16.78%. The next largest increase is employee benefits, which is at 6.48%. There are significant challenges for this budget, as the superintendent has spoken about. Medical insurance and transportation are two of the largest drivers. Medical insurance is projected to increase by more than $1 million. Family insurance costs are now over $40,000 a year in 2024. Transportation is projected to increase by more than $1.2 million. The majority of that is transportation for private schooling. Transportation expenditures have increased by 139% over the last 10 years. The cost has really ramped up steeply over the last 5 years, as shown by this slide. We'll now move on to the revenue section of the budget. The proposed revenue budget is again $77,834,290, which matches the previous expenditure budget. This is broken out into the revenue section, use of reserves, use of appropriated fund balance to get to that number. State aid is only projected to increase by 2.16%. Foundation aid has been a topic of conversation for the last month or so across the state. But that line is only 5% increase for us. We're hoping it increases more as the governor's budget is shaped into a legislative budget to be passed. As of right now, the state's budget is late by about a week and a half. We're hoping to get it done as soon as possible. The prior slide showed transportation costs going up by $1.2 million. This slide shows clearly that transportation aid is only going up by $56,217. That's approximately $1.1+ million percentage mismatch. Foundation aid is underfunded by $128,417 in the governor's budget proposal. Last year, after many years of fighting, school districts received a fully funded amount for foundation aid. Hopefully, the legislative budget restores this $128,000 amounts. As I said, the governor's budget proposal does shortchange the district by that amount for 24-25. While the state's budget is already late, hopefully, and without a time frame for a deal, hopefully that amount plus more will be restored to the district in state aid. The tax levy limit formula has many factors, as seen circled in yellow on the slide. When people talk about the 2% cap, they're only talking about one of those factors. The tax levy limit is $50,647,344. The largest change for our presentation compared to the last one is the fact that the pilot for the property at the National Liquidator site will be paying their pilot for 24-25. We had contact with the town of Hempstead IDA this past month that made the change. All the amount that was previously in the tax levy has been moved to the pilot line on this presentation. So, which lets us get to a tax levy of 2.34%. As shown in the slide, West Hempstead's tax levy is below the average across Nassau County's 56 school districts. Over the last 5 years, the average tax levy change for West Hempstead is the 15th lowest in Nassau County. As we discussed previously, if expenditures are greater than revenues, the district is technically operating in a deficit. That deficit has to be made up. This is the last year of actual expenditures that we have available, and it shows that section in black up top is made up by revenues and fund balance. But by doing so, technically the district is in a deficit. Reserves and fund balance are used to fund that deficit. Well, let's see the definition from the state what revenue funds do. They provide a mechanism for saving during good years while being used during bad fiscal years. It's necessary to save up during that time frame to be able to use it in years such as 24-25. Reserves technically are a part of fund balance. Reserves are restricted to the actual particular usage that they were saved for. Unappropriated fund balance is the amount you can keep up to 4% each year. Maintaining a reasonable amount of this undesignated fund balance is seen by the state as actually be proper budgeting. Here is a history of the budgeted use of reserves and fund balance going back 4 years plus the current budget plan. Again, you can only use reserves if you have it. So savings put away on good years to be used during bad years is the reason why there is a reserve system for the New York State schools. Increased use of reserves and fund balance is not sustainable. Here is a 5-year chart of both reserves and fund balance. As you see it ramping up, especially for 24-25, this cannot continue. Once reserves and fund balance are depleted, how will the district pay for emergencies and unforeseen costs? Here's a chart of the ERS reserve for the past 4 years and going forward. As you see depleted each year, at some point, there is not any left to be used. The next step in the budget process will be a meeting with the Board of Education next on the 16th to adopt the budget. This will happen whether the state's budget comes in or not. Hopefully, in the next week, New York State legislators and the governor agree to sign off on a budget that will provide us with more state aid, but at least a definitive amount that we can use towards our budget. The budget vote is Tuesday, May 21st in the Northside Gym, 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. Any questions?
Do we have any questions from the board at this time regarding the presentation that we just heard? Mr. Lazar?
So we're talking about the tax levy increase, and I just want to clarify with it. When I was looking at it, like you had said, the pilots was Heatherwood being moved out of the regular taxes and over to pilots.
Correct.
Meanwhile, the amount of money from the tax levy before and the change in the tax levy is not going to change from where it was. So the residents of the district need to expect about a $1.6 million increase in what they're going to be paying for their taxes.
The levy is
Coming year.
2.34%.
It's set at 2.34% because the pilots have been moved out, like you said. So from the 49,488 that we were paying, that the entire community was paying last year, 400,000 of that has been moved into pilots, which means that this number is now 49,88. And therefore, everything from that to 56,447 has to be made up by the taxpayers. So just putting it out there, that the increase to the general taxpayers is $1.6 million, which is more like a 3% actual raise.
That being correct.
Your calculations are correct.
No,
But
that's the
the-
calculation the state uses, so I have to use the real numbers.
Okay, but it is $1.6 million in additional funding that needs to be made up because 400,000 is missing from last year's taxes now. That Heatherwood is no longer paying taxes and they're paying pilots instead. It's $417,000.
I don't have Heatherwood's taxes, but I don't believe it.
I do have it. I could show it to you if you would like to see it.
No.
Okay. So I just wanted to clarify that. Now, my biggest concern is, from looking at all this, is exactly like you said, reserves, we're running out of. I don't believe that anyone believes that there's going to be a big difference in what the state gives us moving forward, as it's been spoken about in the budget years beforehand, that we're going to hit a fiscal cliff. And at that point in time, which I believe we're at right now, how long will our reserves last? If we needed an extra 2 million this year, and if we're going to increase the budget by 5% next year and the year after, and we're only going to have about 2% or so to add to that budget, that's $3 million each year. How can we afford to spin out and use all our reserves that quickly? And how will that affect the children in our schools that are going to then have a much larger loss to the schools of teachers and other things because of the lack of funding?
It's our two drivers that was spoken about, medical insurance and transportation.
So what are we doing about it?
That's really the question. Do we change transportation? Ideas?
I've given a bunch of ideas. Hopefully, we'll look into them.
Centralized pickup?
That's an idea.
And in addition to that, if we look at, and I don't like to bring up this area, but it's an easy one to see. Actually, let's start from a different area. I discussed at last meeting, I was asking questions about budget item, building doors. I happen to like it at this point, like I liked other things in the past. I see on this budget, it's no longer showing up. Is that change? We're not budgeting anything for it. What's the story on this budget that has changed? You can find that at A6, 1621 or 6724.
The facilities budget lines were consolidated, so doors are still part of our budget.
Okay, so doors are still part of the budget. They're now consolidated into the next item so that no one actually can see what's for doors and what's for not doors.
No, it's not just doors.
I know,
Facilities was consolidated.
right, it's consolidated, so now we no longer will see these items on the budget anymore.
No, doors are still part of the budget.
Okay, right, okay, fine. It's still part of the budget. What I understood last time, besides that we hadn't been spending the money on the doors the past 3 years, that they were being used for security locks. Is that still correct information that this budget item is supposed to be going towards that?
That is correct.
Okay, we have not transferred funds out to security locks, and we have an $860,000 grant
For the
from,
24th,
State.
25. Is that what you're referring to?
in the past 3 years. Of the money, a little bit might have been used towards locks, but most of it's been either transferred out for other purposes and not for locks. But I also noticed that we have a grant for $860,000 from the smart bond that was done, which covers these security locks. What additional locks did we need to buy that costs about $160,000 over the past 4 years?
It's not. The smart bond was used for multiple security measures throughout the district, and other items. So it was not just for door locks or new doors.
I understand, but the $860,000 was also to include the smart locks.
It was to include whatever was going to be able to be cost out in that price.
Look for it later and I can send it to whoever wants to see it, but I do have all the items that were in that smart fund.
Correct. However, just like anything else, when something is budgeted, if the money doesn't cover the cost, certain items are not done. Just like if we need the money from a door that we haven't done yet to pay for something else, we have to take that money from that budget line and spend it on something else. It's similar to if you budget money to put windows in your house, but then you get a hole in your roof, you take them, you don't get new windows, you use it to pay for the roof. So that's what ends up happening at certain occasions.
Okay. So again, these are things that I noticed in the budget, and I do know, yes, this year, ERS, we're budgeting properly. In the past years, we actually over budgeted that item by almost
David,
$200,000.
we're not gonna speak that way. We've talked about the way
Really, this is what we're gonna do?
we're
I
gonna, wait.
I want to
We're
understand.
gonna, but we're not gonna speak that
Want us
way.
to answer
Somebody to be
questions?
disrespectful. We're going to
We'll
speak
answer
properly and ask your questions without being disrespectful, because we've had this conversation in the past. I haven't really heard questions.
Why, in the past few years, did we budget $850,000 to $60,000 for ERS when we were only being billed by the state closer to $650,000 to $695,000 for those items? Why did we budget?
We'll get you an exact answer, but everything, as you know, budgeting is an estimate, still an estimate. We don't even know what the final budget's going to be, right? So we estimate it.
We had,
We estimate it wrong. I'll get you an answer.
we had those bills in November prior to the,
I will get you the answer.
either way, what my
Not
biggest
either.
concern is. My concern is that we have a very large budget. We have reserves that are dwindling. We have a tax base that can't afford all the taxes, and we need to find ways of reducing the cost so that the school can actually have the necessary needs that it needs, because we're running out of money, as everyone had just said. Reserves are disappearing, and you cannot continue to do that. So
Correct,
we're-
however, wasn't it you last year
Right.
and yourself, Mr. Glass, if I'm not mistaken, and I don't want to, talk out of turn, who said we needed to use more of our reserves in order to fund the budget so that we didn't have to raise the taxes. So we're trying to alleviate some issues with using reserve funds. We've been saying this for the last 4 or 5 years, that the more we use the reserve funds, the more we're going to deplete, and we're going to end up in this position. We've continually said it, but we are trying to do, the year we went out at zero, we used multiple reserve funds. We did what we thought was the right thing to do and go out at zero. However, today, we're sitting here in a position where we're at the downward spiral of that. And then eventually, when we have good years, we build up our reserves, and it'll be all about the fact that we're stashing money away. So it can't be both. It's got to be one or the other. If we're using the reserves to offset the tax levy for the community, that's what we want to happen, correct? That's what everybody keeps saying, and that's what we try to do every year. But now, on the flip side of that, now we're talking about the fact that we're not going to have any reserves moving forward. So there has to be a happy medium somewhere. It can't just be, what are we going to cut? What are we going to take away? What are we going to do? And unfortunately, the problem is going to remain, to nobody's fault, that transportation costs are going to continue to skyrocket. Healthcare coverage is going to continue to skyrocket. State mandates that are not funded by the state are going to continue to skyrocket. So yes, we have to find a way to fix that problem. But it's not going to be by taking away transportation. It's not going, right? Because if we take transportation away for the public school kids, we have to take it away for everybody else. There's too many people in this district that receive transportation to ever say that we could possibly take it away. But at some point, the state may say that's our only option. What do we can't take healthcare away from the people that are contractually, obligated to get it. So somewhere along the lines, and unfortunately, Ollie's Taxi is not the answer to busing. Somewhere along the line, we have to get together and come up with a feasible solution, not picking on a door lock or, trying to transport our children via Ollie's Taxi.
Can I ask a question?
And I just want to clarify a couple, let me clarify two. Referring to the door locks process we've been working on for 4 or 5 years, that was reference to 24. Want me to get more answers on how many locks we bought previously? Somewhere over 100 already, but if you don't want us to finish the project, then that's what you should state. That's number one. Number two, you asked us to go out for RFPs. You can't do that yet, but we told you that. We did look into some RFPs and we spoke to other districts that went out with new routes, 30%, 33%, 34%, as opposed to 3. Assuming we don't, the 3, if you want to go out with 34, let me know. And then, of course, we're going to be looking at combining routes, but I have to do that sensibly. I don't want any child in our school district to be on the bus for 3 hours or 2 hours. That's not okay. So we have to balance all those things. So I'm not going to have an answer for you tonight about busing. Are we looking at ways to save money? 100%. You want everything to be done perfectly, I think, or, like as close to perfectly as you can in a world in which that's just not a real thing. So you had some suggestions, we took them. You have not made a suggestion to me tonight that's new or different, and so I'm waiting to hear. And again, I want to reiterate, you can't play both sides of the coin. Because in private, you tell me one thing, in public, you say something else, right? And that's what you do, and it's not okay. And so, as Karen said, I want to reiterate that you said maybe 12% is a good number for the savings account, just so we're speaking the same language instead of in terms of reserve. We had to use more than that. Nothing we could do. Unfortunately, we weren't expecting these costs to skyrocket like this. I wasn't expecting 5 students to request a bus in the last, I'll say, month. These things happen. So I don't know that those are not easy solutions, and you're right, they're not easy solutions. I'm still looking at good scenarios to present to you guys about, looking at buying buses for them. To go electric. Apparently all legislators want to go electric. I sent all those letters out, right? I showed you guys those letters. I got some letters back. They don't want to hear it. They want to go green. I don't know how that's going to work, but that we can get there. So I don't understand it. Are you trying to work with us or you're trying to work against us? That's all I really want to know, because it's not going to be great. If all you're going to do is attack and not ask questions, door's always open and you never come. So door's still open. I just want to let you know.
So I have a question. David, you said that you gave transportation ideas to cut costs. That's what you just said. Other than putting children in Uber ride shares, I have not heard a feasible idea from you. So when you say that you made suggestions for cutting costs due to transportation, other than using Ubers, the only other suggestions I remember are buying buses, which cost money, and a transportation study, which costs money. So maybe I'm confused and I missed your cost cutting ideas that you have shared with us. So if you could enlighten me again, I'd love to hear it.
So,
That don't involve spending money or Ubers.
first of all, I never said Uber.
You
I
absolutely
said
said ride
taxi
share,
services
Taxi, which are Ubers,
That-
so
Okay.
taxi service.
Well, I'm asking about-
We're not gonna
If you want to have a discussion like that, that's fine. I'll go to the next thing.
Well,
Whoever wants to-
please
We're
don't,
not gonna debate back and forth.
but what I'm saying is, please
If you
don't
wanna answer the
contradict me.
question.
You said, okay, so you didn't say Uber, you said taxis. I stand corrected. Please go on.
Taxis are certified to transport students, not people that are not certified. The next thing that I suggested was that there is a company
You
out there that helps and can do it on contingency, find ways of being able to consolidate routes properly, which we have not done.
But you
anything
pay
about.
for that service, no?
Contingency, you only pay if they say,
But you pay
We're not
for that
raising,
service.
we're not raising voices.
yes, you pay for that service.
Okay, thank you. Go on.
You will. And you don't really want to hear, so I don't have.
You said you
Right, we're
had
not gonna,
ideas.
we're
for
not gonna have this
transportation.
debate back and forth
This
like
this
this.
section
This
is
is,
for
this is,
questions
this
to
is gonna
Brian
be,
on the budget, not for us to go back and forth. So,
We can ask each other questions.
well, this
this is
section.
not how this is gonna work. We're not gonna have an argument or a debate at the table. Do you have a question to be asked at this
I'll
point?
let them
Another
flash
question?
and I'll come back.
Okay, Mr. Blast, did you have a question?
Yeah. First, for the record, Karen, my good friend, I don't think that I'm in the group that calls for utilizing reserves. I don't think it's a good idea.
I said,
I know you weren't sure, but I just wanted to confirm for the record that I don't believe in that. I'd much rather keep costs in line with anticipated revenues. So what, I don't want to see people losing jobs, but whatever that entails, you have to be cognizant of your current revenues. So just to clear where I stand on that. That's a couple of questions on the budget. First of all, I saw the breakdown of the transportation section in the budget, and I compared it to prior year budget to see where the increases were. And I saw that in the private and parochial school budget, it seems like the other categories were pretty much in line with prior years. And for some reason, most of the increases in that private and public school, and that particular line in the private parochial schools increased by about 25% from last year. Could you enlighten us why that is?
We have a big bus contract for multiple routes that has a set fixed approximately 3% increase. So routes that are being handled by that contract are set at that lower rate. So they only go up by certain amounts. And that's many district buses that utilize within our own district.
So private schools aren't covered under those contracts. They're
Only a few
separate.
routes, not all. of them. We have over 100 private school routes. So
and that one changes next year, that
we
route.
have one more year of
one's up,
that,
right?
that contract. Unfortunately, after that, we'll have to reopen that, or we hopefully get an extension with our contractor.
So that line could end up going up next year.
And then all our new routes are not public routes. Our new routes that we get during the year are almost always private school routes.
Okay, thank you. Now, another question. I was looking at the breakdown of utilization of the reserves. Okay, and I was particularly focused on the TRS reserve, and I know previously we were under severe limitations on that. We were only able to use it to the extent of $260,000 a year. And now it seems like we're up in the $1 million range. Does something change on the regs on that, or?
Now we're fully funding it and fully using it immediately.
Well, we weren't doing that previously.
We did not fully utilize it this past year. I don't know what the amount was for the budget adoption. I have.
Yeah, it was like 250, 260 almost every year.
Right.
And
So,
this year it's like around $1 million.
correct. That would take us down to a reserve of about $80,000.
Okay, so you were targeting where you wanted to be on the reserve.
There's no
after.
targeting. This is to have a budget.
Okay, but okay, so we could have in the past taken more. Is what you're saying, or I'm trying
I
to
was
be
thinking
clear.
fast.
He wasn't
He
here.
wasn't here, so he can't speak to that.
Okay, that's fair. Okay. Okay, so now my final comment again, it has to do with the utilization of the reserves, not to be redundant, but to take the reserves and the appropriated fund balance totaling $5 million budget. I'm fully bought into how we're going to cover things in future years. And I think in future years, when we hit that fiscal cliff, it'll be a heck of a shock to the system to all of a sudden do what's actually necessary without being able to rely on the reserves. So I would propose that we ease into the utilization of the reserves and where we need to cut, and it seems like it's not just gonna be this year, it could be for years to come, we ease into the cuts and so that we, so it's not as much of a jolt to the system when, to get to where we need to be, given the revenues.
Can you just say that again? Did you say even?
I don't know if I can say that.
Yeah, he said.
Just really and he's into the reserve or?
Well, I'm saying ease into the expense reductions rather than waiting for the year where we're absolutely out of
Have to cut
reserves
everything.
and then take a heck of a hit. I don't think anybody wants to see what that year is gonna look like.
I believe if I'm not mistaken, there were a lot of cuts put into the budget before we even got a copy of the budget. Correct? I mean, I know that the first memo that we got said that they had cut a lot of,
Yeah,
Stop.
the last meeting, Mr. Raymond, led
Yeah.
off by saying there'd be cuts.
no, but I'm saying,
Yeah.
I believe that the original budget that they created, then they cut it to get it to where we are now, and then we had to excess teachers and faculty to get to now where we are today.
Well, yeah, all I'm suggesting is as painful as it is,
No,
maybe we haven't gone far enough for this year and maybe the years to come. Just a thought.
As far as cuts.
Or cuts, yeah, take more now as opposed to waiting for the big year where we have nothing to turn to.
So cut more now and then use less reserves.
And use less reserves and then sort of ease in the effects of the cuts over the years to come, rather than doing much more in the year that we actually run out of reserves. That would not be a pretty year.
and when you're
you
saying
have-
cuts, when you say cuts, I just want to clarify, you're talking about any piece of this budget, not just people.
Anything we have control over.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
No, I just wanted to
understand it's not we don't
clarify.
have control over, but.
If we were-
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
go ahead, Fires, before I. yes.
Have we examined centralized pickup and what the cost payment
Part of
will
the
be?
process.
What kind of savings does that allow us? I mean, because we can see what the driver is here. And I will tell you, as a resident of this community, I know that transportation and healthcare, it is not sustainable. You look at what it's done over the last few years. We must get our handle on transportation. And I know it is the third rail of our community. But it is the largest single line item in our budget, I believe. And it is absolutely unsustainable. So we must figure out some way to manage busing and centralized pickup. If that is something that will help us and is a step in the right direction, maybe it's something we should consider. Do we know roughly what it?
I don't know how much the savings would be. It would have to be a study with all our companies. Well, let's do that.
I mean, I know what, I know when Joel looked at it in the past, they didn't seem to think it was going to save that much money, but we don't know what that much money is anymore, because the busing companies may think differently this time. When, they're paying this much money for gas and they're charging this much, maybe it is an option.
Just out of curiosity, Bert, just what do you think we can cut? I'm really interested in what we think we can cut.
Okay, I think it's a great question. And I'm not trying to duck your.
No,
I'm not trying to duck your question, but I'm a financial guy, I'm not an education guy. And I think
That's why I'm
it'd be
asking.
presumptuous with the experts that are sitting here at the table for me to suggest to them the specific items to be cut. I would be 1,000% wrong if I did that.
But I understand what you're saying, but maybe they need some help in suggesting. I mean, not everybody is perfect and they're not coming up with a certain idea that you may be thinking.
Yeah, I mean, what I would suggest is maybe there are 5 areas of kind of, not that we need all 5, but that the experts should come to us and that we as a board can prioritize, no, that one we don't want to do, or this one we want to do, to give us some options that we can talk around and what are the pros and cons of each. Or for me to say, on page 48, I saw a number for $1 million. I think it should be $500,000. Way too presumptuous. Like, I hate to think anybody on this board would be in that position.
Yeah.
To say that. Yes, that's why I'm not saying that. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
That's up here.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Ann, you have a question?
Nope.
Kurt?
Nope.
Oh. Brian, can we just go back to the 2.34%? 2.34% is the amount we can levy to the public.
Correct.
That means that the amount of the budget, 0.34% of that is what we're levying to the budget, to the taxpayers, which is how much money? I could have just done that myself, actually. Sorry. Should be in.
About 1.2, a little bit less than $1.2 million.
Okay.
I'm sorry, what was it again?
1.2 million.
1.2 approximately?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So we're not levying anything over and above that. We can't ask for any more money over and above that. Any other thing over and above that is based on home assessments. Whatever, if your taxes raise over $2.34 million, 2.34%, it's based on the assessment of your home. and what the county is doing, correct?
Yes, we have no control over, we offer a levy to the county, how they distribute.
How they distribute it and break it up is based on what kind of exemptions you have, whether you have senior exemption, the low, whatever exemption, the fireman's exemption, any of the above, veterans exemption,
Well,
so anything. Star. It's all the same. We'll let it start with an S. Okay, I just wanted to clarify, because based on what, Mr. Lazar was saying at the beginning, I wanted to make sure that we were clear that all we were levying was $2.34 million. Doesn't have anything to do with 2.34%, excuse me. That's because I have the word million next, which is less than what we were coming out at in the,
it was,
But still the max that we can do at this time.
unfortunately, it is, but we don't have the ability to take more from reserves. And so while they can go back and continue to look between now and next week when we have to adopt this budget, and we may get, the governor's budget may come out and we may be in a different position. We never know. But currently, this is where we're at. And unfortunately, this is what we have to do to sustain our district. Because we cannot take all the money we need contractually, transportation wise. We're not buying buses to transport kids in 3 months. We know that. We need the buses now, these busing contracts, the way they are. Unfortunately, transportation companies have us by the neck. We have to go with what we have. Nobody is getting in their car and driving their kids to Queens and wherever. It's just unfeasible. That's why the state allows busing for students that go outside of district. I used it. Other people have used it. We know that that's what it's there for, and we don't have an issue with providing that. I don't think anybody on this board has an issue with providing that. It's just how to sustain it. Again, the same thing is, maybe in the future we have to look at health insurance, but again, we've discussed the fact that that's contractual. It's built into the teacher's contract, it's built into our administrator's contract and all of that. It's not something that we can just say, hey, here's your new health insurance. We don't have that option. So we're going to have to look at options. We're going to have to discuss these things, but it's not something that can be done like that. And unfortunately, those are the things we're going to have to do in the future to sustain our district and keep us, with a small amount of reserves. Right.
Now, down.
Right. That's what I said. The original levy was 3.08, I think, right?
Can't have everything.
But it's,
Gotta be.
I understand the conversations about with the levy. If you look at the calculation for the levy, it changed because of the pilot that appeared.
I
The
understand.
pilot that appeared is coming out of the regular budget, which means that the taxpayers as a whole, between the residents and the commercial and all those properties, will now have $417,000 less money be paying towards the original 49 million. And that will also have to be made up by all of the taxpayers. So that is 400,000 in addition to the 1.2 new money. If you look at the calculations,
That's
it's right there.
commercial. That goes to
It goes to commercial, and then the Nassau County reassess who's paying what. And at the end of the day, the
Right, but
commercial
that's
and the.
county. That's not us. That's Nassau
But
County.
the tax pool of
So David,
$49 million.
what would you like us to do? Go out with
You started.
a higher percentage to cover that? Like, I don't understand what you're saying. We can't take responsibility for the county's assessment.
Or the town.
No.
We, for the town's IDA powers, right?
The
We
other
can't
part
do
of that,
that.
which I think is important to note, is anytime a business shutters its doors, or a house goes off the tax rolls, or a new institution, religious institution is opened up, those things go off the tax rolls. And that money rolls to the homeowners. That rolls to the homeowners. So every time that happens, it rolls to the homeowners. So our taxes will continue to go up as we continue to have these types of things happen in our business. We see you drive down Hempstead Turnpike and you can see all the empty businesses and all the churches and all the religious institutions, and none of those people are paying taxes. And that falls to homeowners. So just like the pilot program for Heatherwoods, yeah, that's going to impact us. Hopefully it will impact us in a positive way over time for our community, for our children. But we have to pay the bill, just like we have to pay the bill for busing. If we want to provide busing for our community, which I think everyone on this board wants to provide busing to our community, we have to pay for it. It's $10 million. It is ridiculous. But do we want to do it? That's the question for our community. What do we see? What is our vision for the school, but for this district and for our schools in 2024, 25? Do we want to provide education and transportation to our children, or do we not? And we're not going to get it back with locks on the door or cheese sandwiches. Excuse me, I yield the floor.
Okay, do we have any other questions from the board at this time before I move to the audience?
Just a quick question on the appropriated fund balance. Wondering how that number changes from year to year. Where does that money come from?
As the end amount of the usage amount or the appropriate fund balance?
The amount that's available to be used. So it's going from 2,425 to 3 million. Where does that
Projected amount to come at the end of the year of 23, 24?
So it's extra money that we had at the end of the year.
Hopefully. And that's the projection for it.
So we're expecting a positive at the end of the year as opposed to a negative. We were showing the
Appropriations, yes.
Okay, so we're expecting a surplus.
No, they're not.
Then where is it coming from? I'm
It's
confused.
coming from the appropriation budget. Revenue budget and appropriation budget are separate. Our revenue budget is roughly $70 million this year. Appropriations are 74. So difference between the two is roughly $4 million. So we are having $4 million appropriate fund balance.
If we use appropriated fund balance,
Who's not speaking to the mic?
make everything equal, right? Yep, right? So, but we try not to use that money, so we always have it. Which is what we've always done here. I've been here 15 years. This is the way it works. We never get enough state aid. They look at us as a wealthy school district, so our state aid numbers get skewed. When I first got here, they equated us to Plainview. I worked in Plainview. I'm not being disrespectful to either community. You can put them side by side. You tell me, right? So, you know, this is what happens. So when we appropriate this money, we try not to spend it. So you keep saying surplus because you're trying to make a point. And it's not a good one because you're trying to divide the community. The one in private where you try to tell me, I know, you try to tell me we're all trying to work together. But you run behind the walled gardens out there in the social media land and you tout a whole different story. That's not okay. We have to be truthful and transparent at this stage. So if you have a problem, you should say it, but you can't play both sides to the middle. It's just not going to fly. It's okay to disagree. It's okay if you vote 0 next week. In your mind, that's okay. That's your choice. That's your right. We will support you. I don't agree with you. Mr. Blass and I stood together for a good hour and a half one day. Not a single problem. He made his points. I made mine. We left it be. He's going to do what he wants to do and what he believes to be his best for this entire community. I'm going to do what I think is best for the entire community. What are you going to do?
Do what I think is best to
Find out.
From the board at this time. Okay, so do we have any questions from the audience, Mrs. Kilty?
First, I want to thank Byers for saying what he said because you were reading my mind.
Oh.
So the question came up, Heatherwood pilot program, I know the tax issue. So does Pompeii pay taxes anymore? No.
No.
Does Shetty's property pay taxes anymore?
That's to my knowledge, no.
And all of the, I guess they're churches and storefronts, once they become a religious organization, they don't pay any tax.
Correct.
So that burden comes on us.
Yes.
It's
Correct.
not. So again, this is my opinion. I've said it for years up in Albany. I think the law has to change about religious properties not paying taxes. Years ago, religious properties were exempt from taxes because of cost, financial. They did not have it. And today you look at it, religious organizations have a lot of money. And so if they're not even funded, tax funded at 100%, they should be funded at 30%, 40%, should be paying the tax that on the property they're using. So I think that's something that school boards need to lobby for, about changing that law, that financially all religious organizations have funding. And the fact is that they should be paying a percentage of the taxes on that property. If they can't afford the 100%, but at least a percentage, because the burden is coming onto the communities for that. So think about it as boards, you go to board meetings, the Nassau County Board, that is something to lobby for. They hear me say that all the time and say, this whole thing is wrong. This law has to change. It's obsolete. And it would be better for everybody if we, just like the foundation aid, that is incorrect and they're gonna work on finally. It needs to be fixed.
One of the main reasons why this budget process is being up is the faith-based housing, well, not even that, faith-based housing, where the governor is trying to put in a law that allows religious institutions to build a five-story housing
Right.
on their property, and then that's tax exempt.
Right, and so
That's a way she's trying to get around the local zoning of housing.
we brought it before, is we have no control of the county tax roll. The county's budget comes in after school budgets. And so we have no control of that. We're actually only voting, I mean, you know that I know these budgets. We're actually only voting on 5% of this budget. That's all we're voting on. The other part of it is state and federally mandated, 95% of it. Okay, and unfortunately, that is the way it has come through the years, and we have no control of that. But counties' budget coming in after school budgets is detrimental to every school district. And again, I never got an answer. Maybe when he gets out of jail, he'll give me that answer. But
Thank you.
you know, that's a whole issue. It's people don't realize how it affects us. Because you hear people in the community say, well, my tax roll went up. You said it was only going up this, but they're not realizing, which is what you said, it's the county roll, it's the assessment in our houses. It's not the school budget that's doing it. And that's the issue. So it needs to be made very clear to people. The job of a Board of Education is to continue having sound education for every child in our community, whether they are in public or private schools.
Thank you.
That is your goal. And I believe that you are doing it
Thank you.
conscientiously.
Mrs. Delina.
Hi, it's Lena. So, just to piggyback on that, I think it's 52 homes that are tax exempt in our community, which comes out, you just did an average about $500,000 of revenue that doesn't come to our schools. And it's excessive because in neighboring towns, it's 1 or 2 homes, if you look it up. But also in addition now to the high population of private school students in our district, that definitely drives up the cost. And we need to provide the services without any foundational aid. Am I correct on that?
We provide the services based on our budget.
Whatever our budget.
Right.
Right, but the foundational aid, is that included in that? Like, when we're talking about price, per student being spent, do we have a number for what we spend in our district for private school students? So in other words, what the busing costs per private school student, the outside services, special education? What kind of money leaves the district
It's
for that?
millions. I mean, I think there's a slide 2 presentations ago, but like we do have staff who do provide services
Mhm.
embedded at some private schools. Say Hank will have district employees
Right.
who get paid, get their health insurance, get their
So what I'm
pensions.
asking is, do we have a number that we know is kind of allocated towards private school students? Because when you look at graphs that are being put on, on social media, they'll say price per student and West Hempstead's way high, but they don't include Lawrence in that.
They all
graph.
include the choice, like they
And
might strip out transportation, but they all include the
They don't
cost
include
for,
Lawrence
like,
because Lawrence has a high private school, private
it's
population,
more that they just don't include the private school costs
like
that
70%. So
Right,
the
but-
price per student looks like something else when you have.
it's
You know
missing
what I mean?
items.
It's hard to get the whole thing is missing. State aid formulas, the state aid formulas,
It's terrible.
but listen, bring it back to why we're all here.
So I would.
It's for every student aged 5 out of 22. which is a whole nother, used to be 21. Now the state wants us to educate children until they're 22 in some instances. So now think about that math, right? So to say, is there a number? It's very hard to get an exact number. Again, I know a lot of people perfection and exactness, but that's not how it works. I mean, there's 5 kids who, well, 4, misspeak, 4 kids who are going to a private school now that just, I live in West Hampton, I don't know where they came from, it was late in the game. I mean, that's bad math, $150,000 for a van, round number, and then you do, let's say the tuition's 70,000 times 4,
Right.
so it's 280, so it's, it's a $500,000 right there. So every time you do that, and that could be for any kid, it could be for a public school kid or a private school kid, because we have public school students who can't be successful in this setting. So we send them like to a BOE school, let's say, where they can be successful. Hopefully we bring them back, but sometimes that's not the case. I'm not picking on special ed, these are just examples. People say they'll get into the whole debate, you don't need as much room. Okay. I don't agree with that. We need space. How do you educate special ed children in a co-taught setting, right? You need space. How do you educate our ENL, or Ls rather, in an ENL program?
Mhm.
When they just can't, we had, like I said last time, 88 from, not from Brooklyn to Bronx, Queens, from new countries that we don't typically get. So they take classes with general ed classes, right? But they also have their own classes because state mandates state they need X amount of time to be supported so that they can read, write, listen, they can speak in English. Okay, well, that takes space and time. Well, that's resources. It's like when people want to tell you the class size on Long Island, and I'm going to make it very general. Class size on Long Island is 10 to 1. 10 to 1 width.
Yeah. It's not.
Like it's 10 to 1 width. That's not, because what they do, what a lot of people like to do, they'll take the number of students, in this case, public school, right? And then they'll divide it by the total number of FTEs. I know, anyone who stops and thinks for 3 minutes knows that that's not true. That's not how it works. So to say there's a number, hard.
I
It's
understand
hard.
it's hard.
Now,
It's important.
to that point, it was brought up last time, we spend more than, some neighboring districts. That's true. And I'm starting to look more deeper into this. Some of those places don't have as many special ed, or special ed population 17%. And we are proud of that. We built 8 programs, 12 programs, 15 programs here. We're looking to expand our programs. Matter of fact, today, Ms. Karras went to visit another school to bring 2 students from another district in. Well, probably 1, but went to see 2. There's some other things going on that I'm not going to talk about right now in public because they're not official or real yet. But we're looking to build relationships with other school districts so that we can look at other ways to generate revenue, but also to build a program, right? And when we do stuff, we do it right, like it or not. Touchy subject, but we're a learning organization. We're here to learn. So we've gotten better because we learn about things all the time and we'll keep improving. But that takes time, space, and resource. So I don't know. I get it, but I think, we're talking about human beings, and let's not forget that. I sat with 8 human beings on Friday and told them they didn't have a job from June 30th. That's a reality. Listen, sometimes I was here once before, 13 years ago, and I was told to access 10. I was given the letters and say good luck. Wasn't great then, it's not great now. Sometimes it's necessary, though, to make things work longer term. Can we still offer a robust program? Yes, we can. 100%. Will there be more study halls in the secondary school? Yeah. Is that good? Don't know the answer to that. It's like not having a matron on the bus. So we wrote a grant for matrons next year so we can put some matrons on the bus. So what are we going to do? We're already investigating. I want to talk a little out of turn because it's definitely not official. We're going to look at ways for kids, instead of taking study hall, maybe they could do some self-directed learning and gain credits that way. We have to figure that out because that somehow, some way that might cost money. That we can't do because it's a tight budget. But we're not going to stop thinking of different things. So everything's a work in progress. That's always evolving.
It's just difficult to put a final number on it based on each individual student.
I know it is, and that's why I'm bringing it up because it's put out there like we spend so much money, but a good portion of our money is spent.
And I'll just make
Funding.
one quick comment here in regards to Lawrence, and I'm sure other school districts in Nassau County have the same problem, maybe not as large as ours with transportation, but we were the only school district 2 years in a row not to pass their budget. So I don't think it's about an issue of having more costs or more expenses than other. It's whether or not the people in the community care and want to support the children, all children of the community, whatever their needs are. You know, Lawrence didn't fail their budget 2 years in a row. So, you know, I think it's more about the people of the community caring about what's actually in the budget and the services that provide to everyone, rather than trying to run this as a business.
I agree.
Mrs. Magarachi.
Sorry, Magarachi resident. I just want to say that this time of year makes me sad because I'm not sure if you're all aware, but you're not on some town board, some legislative board. You're on our public school board that you got elected to represent our public children. And I have to say that it is disturbing and upsetting when I feel like some of you at times feel like you're against the public school system and against the public school children and doing anything you can to take away what little they have left. And then help cause a divide in our community, which we all know is gonna get ugly. And in a world full of division and hate right now, I'm literally upset. You're supposed to be fighting for our kids, not cutting their teachers. You should be fighting for their programs and how can we make it better for them, not take it away. And if that's what you want to do, you should not be on the public school board. Thank you.
We have other questions from the audience at this time, Mr. Zelig.
You've been talking a lot about exemptions, religious exemptions and other exemptions. I know the Heatherwood project is a $200 million project. What's the amount that we're getting related to school taxes per year from that pilot project?
The first year is approximately 400,000 in school pilot payment, not taxes.
Not taxes, they're paying pilots in
There's
approximately
a schedule.
400,000.
Right, there's a schedule, so we get, until we get the actual payment in December, the first payment, it's all approximate. So, while I give a pilot schedule, it doesn't say how much is for the school district and how much is for general taxes.
So it's a $200 million project, $400,000 it's a school tax.
I think it's approximately $775,000 is the pilot schedule first year.
In taxes, but we don't know how much of it is gonna exactly come to us.
And then I know we saw the transportation numbers. What do the transportation aid numbers look like? I know there's a revenue portion to that too. So that $9 million or whatever it is.
We're getting
It was-
$56,000 of additional state aid revenue for transportation, and our costs are going up about 1.2 million.
On slide 9.
And what's the total transportation that's coming?
$4.3 million this year is approximately $4.3 million last year.
Make sure nobody else had it. Do we have any other questions in the audience? I just don't want to skip. Erin,
Just an excellent question.
Mrs. Cole.
If you have to get rid of teachers, and teachers know that this is coming up, how do you retain the other good teachers we still have? Are people starting to get nervous? Like, we failed our budget 2 years in a row. And now, it seems like there's going to be a lot more cuts. And that is probably going to need teachers and programs. How do you retain? How do you keep all the good ones? Because I know of 2 who had to leave or left because they knew what was going to happen. And I heard that from kids. So what do you do?
Well, if you're talking about 2 teachers who left in the middle of the year, you're, okay, 'cause that wouldn't be accurate.
No, and it wasn't this year. It was last year.
Retaining teachers is, I think it used to be overblown here. It was more administrators were the revolving door of the world. No, some people are nervous, especially the young ones who are at the bottom of the seniority list, right? Like that's how it works. It's the way the process happens. You build a good program and you support them. That's what we do. And then you hope for the best. I mean, there's a little hope in there. I'm not gonna lie to you. And if someone says to me, what am I supposed to say to someone who just got married or wants a house, just bought a house, right? Like, everyone has to ultimately do what they have to do. You know, people ask me, you know, they act, because we all behave in a certain way here, and I'm guilty of it myself. So people get, that makes people nervous, right? Because they think it's the end of the world, but we're really debating what's best for the community. This is not just a public school board, it's a board for the entire community, for all students ages 5 to 22. And we do that well. I don't know, I know we don't get credit for it. I'm not really interested in that point, but how do you support them? We do all the time. We support them in many different ways. Ultimately, everyone has to make their own choice, right? And I'm not, I don't know how to say this, because I don't want to make light of it. I'm not. You sat on Friday, you know, I'm not making light of it. We also have to act like learning organization that is always developing young talent. And sometimes that young talent will leave. I had a conversation with the North Shore School District, not North Shore, but a North Shore School District, a Gold Coast School District. And they won't hire anybody that doesn't have 7 years of experience. Oh, that's a nice problem to have. And they stole some of our people recently. And the superintendent called me and apologized, and I'm like, apologize. People have to do what they feel is best. And so, you know, I look, again, I'm not being flippant. I take it as a compliment that this district is producing human beings and learning organizations that are excelling to a point where they feel confident and they are performing at the highest level. So they're already doing it here, right? And so everyone's gonna get annoyed at me, but I'm gonna do it anyway. And you go from an 82% graduation rate to mid-90s, statistically insignificant, 1-2%, whether it's 94, 95, or 96. Lambo, you happy?
Yes, I am.
Okay. You know, your advanced Regents diploma, which is a real number to me, because a Regents diploma to me is not enough for our kids, right? Everyone should be getting an advanced Regents. And so when our L's are progressing and moving out of that E&L program, entering Regents classes, and they want to take AP classes, when our special ed kids are being put into least restrictive environments and they're excelling at the best of their ability. That's saying something about the work we do here with the human beings we have, right? That we do have. And we'll figure it out. And it's not going to be easy. And so, again, to close, I'm just going to say this. We're going to continue to support them in every different way. And we are going to have to do things differently. That's okay. Well, and then, you know, like, listen, everyone at this table has had good suggestions, things we're going to think about. Whether it's looking at new RFPs for busing, whether it's buying buses, whether it's looking at ways to combine routes, whether it's, and those are just small things, right? It's a huge number, but there's a small thing to look at. But we'll figure it out. And the only thing that concerns me, and we were here once before, and we're still standing a decade and a half, you know, 12 years later, there was $9,000 or $90,000 in reserves. I don't know which, I'm missing a zero one way or the other, but there was nothing left, and it was bleak and it was hopeless. And, you know, people were telling me to run. I'm not running. I'm not. And right here, this is home now. This is what we do. We're family, and for better or worse, we're family, and we're going to argue with each other and do all that good stuff because that's what families do. But at the end of the day, Kurt's right. Mr. I have to call him Mr. Rockets. Mr. Rockets is correct.
Someone record that.
Yep, it is being recorded. Mr. Rockets is correct. Like, we all have to make a decision, you know, and there's going to be people there will be people who will vote no. There will be people who want zero. That's on them. They're destroying the community. They think they're doing a service somewhere. That's on them. And I have no problem saying it here to them privately or otherwise. 2, 3, 4 with 8 excesses, using the reserves is so reasonable. Yeah, we'll look at other things. We have another week to go before we adopt. We'll go back again. We keep looking every day, and playing with different scenarios. Went from 308 to 234. And I'm not going to argue with people about, you know, what happens next. They're not wrong, but they're also not right. And those are the things we have to do, you know, but people have to come together. We can argue, fight, yell and scream. I'm gonna say it. I said it last year. I'm gonna say it again. We have to come together and figure it out. And I don't want to hear anymore that we don't service all the children of this school district. We do service them. Ask them. Ask them. Because the educators coming out in a week will prove it. I didn't plant those. I didn't mismanage any quotes. I didn't make up any quotes. Hank, right out of their mouths, right out of the mouths of babes, they told the truth. You'll read it, you know. We'll continue to support it, but they have to work with us. You know, everybody has to work together. That's what a team does. That's what family does. So, and still, we're still going to. People will leave. That happens.
The reason why I asked that question is because of everything you just said. Like, I feel like our school district has worked so hard to put together good programs and do a really great job educating our children. And then we get to this time of year and teachers get nervous, and that's not right. Like, that shouldn't be the first thing to go. Like, there's got to be other things that have to go before.
It wasn't the first thing to go.
No, I know, but you know what I'm
No, I know, I do understand,
First thing
and
that hits.
we waited and hoped and tried to figure out other avenues, and there's some validity to maybe not using the reserves, but how deeper do you go, right? You can't have classes of 35 kids. Not possible. It'll be hanging off the rafters and sitting on the univent. We just bought the units. And then they'll be complaining that the univents are broken. We have to fix them if we don't have money to fix them. So, can't win in every which direction. You have to figure it out and support.
We're almost at the end of our timing, but Ms. Gallo, you didn't get to ask a question yet.
For Mr. Phillips, you said we have a 2.34% tax levy. Did I write, I was writing down 1.2 million
Roughly.
approximately. Okay. Do you have any idea how much that is per family? Like, I don't know how many families we have.
Nassau County does the assessment, so when we give the money, we give the information to Nassau County. We give the full levy amount of roughly
Goes by the
550 million.
assessment of your house. So
So
everybody gets a
it's-
different. So a little different. Okay.
It's difficult to do an even estimate.
We can try to do the average household.
We do average household for the people in our district, yes, I can get that.
That. Okay.
I'm gonna go to Mrs. Magaracci and then Mr. Zelig, and then we're gonna.
I'm sorry if I'm supposed to know this. As far as the busing, what is the radius in which we bus? And
15
is it,
miles.
how much?
15 miles is the state
And is
regulation.
that state mandated?
Yes.
All busing state. State.
So there's no way of like just reducing the mileage?
And I think that's 15 miles of how the crow flies.
And how the crow
How the
flies.
crow flies. So you may drive 20 miles,
Right.
15 miles. That's-
I'm just like, we're a district that is always under we're always under our cap. We're always fiscally responsible,
What?
and yet how people come out and vote no is just mind boggling. And it's just such a small portion. I don't even know if they realize that on their tax bill, the school portion is such a minor portion of your tax bill. But it's like people feel like, well, we can say no to this, but we can't say no to the rest, so let's say no to it.
It's
When
most
it's
of our
really
tax
not
bill. I'm
making
sorry,
that
Joe, it's most of our tax bill.
Okay,
You know,
Yeah,
so
wait,
that's not a small
it's
portion
not-
at all.
Not
Right.
the part that we're voting on though. Like the
Uh,
part is
fucking
mandated,
voting.
right? A lot of it, we don't have control over.
Correct. I mean, we vote on the whole thing, which
But we
does
don't have
take
control
up, but
over
we
the
only
whole
have
thing.
control over a certain amount of it,
Correct.
yes. Quite a large amount of it is mandates that we have no control. over.
Control.
Mr. Zelig, your question before we finish?
Yeah, just two quick ones. I know the district was performing an enrollment study. Did the enrollment study provide any answers or anything?
We don't have any
When
answers yet.
as soon as we have it, I will share it with the entire community. I would keep it a secret.
And then the last question, just, I know we have Eagle Avenue that's been rented for a number of years. Are there any discussions of, Eagle Avenue and, what's going to be the future of Eagle Avenue? As a building rented or,
Currently, right now, that building is rented and that's a contractual issue that we can't discuss in public at this time. Any other questions before Mrs. Cole, really quickly,
Haynes doesn't. State.
DOE, I believe, is very different than they have their own rules. DOE has their own regulations. DOE is a whole nother ballgame. So I'm just gonna take this opportunity to just say something that I tend to say every year, and, Mrs. Matarachi really kind of hit it home when she said how sad this part of the year becomes. We have about a month and a half left before the school district vote and the budget elections. And the way it honestly makes people in this community feel at the end of it all is like, thank God it's over, and they're already dreading the following year. It is so unnecessary. The character attacks, the just accusations of mismanagement and everything else. The people that sit up here for a reason. We do this, we've been doing this for a very long time, some of us just started, but the point is that we're up here for a reason. And there's no need that there should be such character attacks on the people that are sitting at this table. There's no need that there should be character attacks on other people in the community when you go out and you disagree with somebody else. We don't have to agree. We just have to live together. I mean, I have lived here my entire life and I have never seen it this bad. I know that there are other people in this room that can say the same thing. It's unnecessary. We're all here for one reason. We all pay taxes here, all of us. We do not want to see our taxes raised 2.34% or 1.34%. But unfortunately, it's just the way of the world. Everything, our water district tax, our fire tax, I'm going to get in trouble for that one. Everything is going up. Our police tax. I want to get paid, so pay that. Okay? Every tax, if you look at your tax bill, it's all going up. It's unfortunately going up because I can't get the word out. The economy is not what it should be right now either. That's not our fault either. However, tomorrow it might be. Listen, nobody here is looking to have to pay more money, and nobody is really looking to say to you, you have to pay more money. Unfortunately, for us to sustain the programs, the education, the transportation, the special ed, the health services, and all of it, it's something that we have to do. We are looking to make the cuts where we can without hurting the children, any of the children, without making everybody to go to one end of town to get on a bus, without, whatever it is. But the bottom line is, every year we come out fiscally responsible, and every year, the character attacks are really unnecessary. So I'm hoping that we can kind of find a way to come together. We're always going to have no votes. We've had no votes since I was in this school. Listen, no votes are no votes. If they want to vote no, that's their prerogative. If you're here to support the school district, if you're here to, better the children's education and everything else, then just come out and vote. Whichever way you vote, you need to come out and vote. The problem isn't the people that are voting no. The problem is the people that are not voting. And that's what I'm going to continue to say over and over again. The problem is not the people that are voting no. And that's all I ever hear is those no votes, those no votes. There's always going to be no votes. The problem is the people that are too complacent to come out and vote. So all I ask is that you come out and vote. I will never tell you how to vote, but I'll tell you how I'm going to vote. But I just ask that you come out and vote, and that you make sure your friends and your neighbors and your families come out and vote. If it's important to them, that's what they're going to do. So with that, I need a motion to adjourn.
Oh, God.
Bert, I saw Bert's hand go up.
I know exactly what.
Bert and Bert, yeah. 47. Bert, but not. Have a good night. Thank you very much.